McConnell said, once the Senate receives a nomination, we look forward to a full, fair, timely confirmation process to fill the director position. So Schumer's out there claiming conspiracy, cover-up, Russians, and this guy says, well, we look forward to a new nominee going through the nomination process here, and we're going to make it really good, and we're going to act quickly, and we assume the president's going to... It's like static. The decision also drew a cool response from a trio of influential Republican committee chairmen. Senator Richard Burr, this guy's a rhino from North Carolina, says he's not going to run again. Absolutely awful. Absolutely awful. He was troubled by the timing and reasoning of Trump's announcement. I have found Director Comey to be a public servant of the highest order, and his dismissal further confuses an already difficult investigation by the committee. Really? You're confused, Senator? Burr is leading the Senate's investigation into Russia's meddling in the White House race and any potential contacts between the Trump campaign and Moscow. Comey has met with the committee several times since the start of that investigation, and Burr praised the former FBI director on Tuesday, calling him a public servant of the highest order. This guy, Burr, you believe this guy? A spokesman for the North Carolina senator didn't immediately respond to requests for comment about when Burr found out about Trump's decision. How about a question from the Hill newspaper reporter, quote unquote, is Mr. Burr concerned about what was stated in the Deputy Attorney General's memorandum? Does he agree with that? Does he agree with the way that Mr. Comey held that press conference in July and issued his letter in October? Does he have any problems with that whatsoever? Does he have any problems with how he conducted his investigation of Hillary Clinton? They didn't use a grand jury, at least not early on. They didn't subpoena, at least not early on when they should have, and so forth and so on. Does that bother the senator? Does it bother Senator Burr that Hillary Clinton was a serial violator of the Espionage Act and she wasn't held to account as a result of the FBI director seizing authority from the Attorney General of the United States or the acting Attorney General of the United States and making those decisions? Now, isn't that what a reporter should ask a doofus Republican rhino chairman of a committee? Yes, I think so. Now, Senator John McCain, he can always be counted on by the media. He said he was disappointed by Trump's decision. It's very disappointing. I'm very disappointed. Everything Trump does, I'm very, very disappointed. Adding that this only confirms the need and urgency for a special committee to investigate the 2016 election. So now we have a special independent counsel called on by the snake, Chuck Schumer, and now we need a special investigative committee to investigate the entire election, says John McCain. Bob Corker, another man who you know, if you've been watching this show for any length of time, I find despicable. He's the man who paved the way for the Iran deal. He's the man who undermined the treaty clause of the Constitution. He's concerned now. Yes, the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee said the Department of Justice reasoning for firing Comey was thorough, but his removal at this particular time will raise questions. What's he, an analyst? It will raise questions. You're a senator. You're head of the Foreign Relations Committee. It is essential that ongoing investigations are fulsome and free of political interference until their completion, regardless of... And then we have Ben Sasse. I'm no fan of this guy either. I think this guy's a chameleon, and I backed him. When he contacted me, he insisted he was a conservative. I have found him to be an incredible disappointment. Regardless of how you think Director Comey handled the unprecedented complexities of the 2016 election cycle, the timing of this firing is very troubling. No, it's not. It's not troubling at all, Senator Sasse. In the midst of a crisis of public trust that goes well beyond who you voted for in the presidential election, the loss of an honorable public servant is a loss for the nation. Anybody out there think Comey being fired is a loss for the nation? And this public sentiment that he talks about, the public distrust of what's going on, didn't Comey help create that? Then there's another. This guy, Jeff Flake. Yes. He tweeted he'd spent several hours trying to find an acceptable rationale for the timing of Comey's firing. I just can't do it. Well, you know what? Then you shouldn't be a senator if you can't do it, because any third grader should be able to figure it out by now. But this is what we get from the Republicans. One other thing. domestic surveillance. There was a hearing this week on domestic surveillance involving the NSA director, Admiral Michael Rogers. It was a pretty important hearing. It's got no attention as a result of the fraudulent media efforts to push a conspiracy theory that does not exist, as a matter of definition, with respect to the firing of Comey, and it's this. Believe it or not, under the questioning of Lindsey Graham, Rogers said to the committee, for everybody to hear, when it comes to unmasking, yes, there's only certain individuals who can ask for it. Lindsey Graham said, well, can we know in a specific case which individual asked to unmask a name? He said, yes. Well, how do you know? We keep a record at the NSA. Really? So if Susan Rice was to ask for the unmasking of an individual, you'd have a record of it? Yes. And we'd have a record of why we decided what we decided. So Lindsey Graham said, so in other words, you should be able to track down who might have leaked the name of Michael Flynn to the Washington Post, which is a felony. He said, it's quite possible we can. And then he added, this was interesting, but here's the thing, Senator. Most of the unmasking is done by the FBI, not by the NSA. I never knew that. Did you know that? I never heard that before. Had you heard that before? Most of the unmasking is done by the FBI. And so now we need to know from the FBI the same standards and circumstances of the NSA. And I suspect there's no doubt that when somebody asks to unmask a name, they have records of it. Again, as an old Justice Department Chief of Staff to a different Attorney General, there's a lot of records that are kept. And so it really shouldn't be that hard to know what should be a relatively small circle of people who asked for people to be unmasked. And notice this has gotten no coverage, none. And I'll tell you why. Because this opens up a Pandora's box. The unmasking of names. If we can track which officials at the White House, in the National Security Council, or other positions in the government, ask for the unmasking of Trump or Trump transition officials, or other presidential candidates in the Republican primaries, or members of Congress, or certain American citizens, or certain political organizations, or other groups, I'm going to tell you something. There could be an awful lot there. That, to me, was incredible testimony yesterday, and I suspect you didn't hear a word of it. Even if you're a news junkie watching cable, watching network, watching satellite, reading everything you can get your hands on the internet, I suspect you didn't know this. Because it's another thing that's being crowded out by the phony stories that are being pushed by the media with respect to the firing of James Comey. But don't forget this, because I'm not going to forget it. We're going to turn back to this. And I know this sounds weird, this is 2 nights in a row, but I got to give Lindsey Graham credit for pressing this point and pressing it in an intelligent way to give us that information. That's important information, don't forget it.